The reluctant assassin Hector stared at the mission parameters displayed on her HUD, her heart sinking as the details became clear. The target was a human colony. She had faced many challenges as a carrion assassin, but this mission made her pause. The last time she encountered humans, it was nothing short of a nightmare. A human mercenary named James Green had her dead in his sights during the Battle of Calac 1-7. His comrades screamed for him to finish her off, yet he lowered his rifle and let her go. That unexpected mercy shook Hector to her core. Were humans truly the inferior savages she had been taught they were? Orders were orders, though. Hector couldn't afford to hesitate any longer. She prepped her scout ship, activated its cloaking device, and set course for the remote human colony. Her objective was simple: eliminate the key leaders of the human resistance, a thorn in the side of the Carrion Empire. Completing this mission would secure her place among the Carrion elite, but the memories of that fateful encounter with James Green haunted her. As Hector observed the human settlement through her high-powered scopes, she couldn't help but notice their resilience. The humans worked together, sharing meager rations, tending to each other's wounds, and consoling children. Their sense of community and empathy was unlike anything Hector had seen in Carrion society. A message from command interrupted her thoughts. The message was blunt: eliminate the target immediately or face censure. Her finger hovered over the trigger as she aimed at the oblivious settlement below. Could she really destroy these people in cold blood? Hector thought of the mercy James Green had shown her. Could she repay that kindness with a kill shot? The decision weighed heavily on her. She knew that completing the mission would secure her place in the Carrion elite, but could she live with herself afterward? As alarms blared and the colonists scattered in panic, Hector knew she had a momentous choice to make. She engaged her ship's cloaking field and descended towards the human colony, scanners probing for a suitable landing spot. Hector set her ship down in a narrow ravine, powering down all non-essential systems. She checked her gear and stepped out into the rust-colored scrublands, her advanced camouflage rendering her nearly invisible against the alien terrain. The human connection Hector activated her helmet's magnification overlay, her HUD filling with a live feed of the colony. She focused on the central atrium, where a one-armed man with a bionic prosthetic limb was teaching a group of children. He sketched out equations on an improvised chalkboard, while nearby, two colonists carefully mapped out irrigation channels, debating optimal water flow. Hector's curiosity grew. These humans were not just surviving, they were innovating and thriving against incredible odds. As she continued to observe, Hector noticed a pregnant colonist waddling into the open-air infirmary. A medic, clad in a fraying lab coat, examined her intently, his face etched with focused compassion. This was no nest of insurgents. It was a sanctuary of life and potential amidst the ravages of a bitter war. Hector's fascination was interrupted by a terse message from Carrion Command. They revealed that the colony harbored key leaders of the human resistance, including their leader, James Carter. Killing him would shatter the burgeoning alliance of rebels and refugees alike, cementing Carrion rule over the sector. Her crosshairs followed James Carter as he moved through the atrium, pausing to tousle a young boy's hair. The child beamed up at him adoringly, and Hector's aim faltered. How could she repay the mercy she had been shown with a kill shot? She needed to know more about these humans. Engaging her suit's metamorphic weave, Hector shifted her appearance to that of a bedraggled human refugee. She pulled a tattered shawl over her head, stashed her carrion gear, and limped towards the colony's perimeter gate. A slender woman with kind eyes approached her. "Welcome, traveler. I'm Sarah. You look like you've been through quite an ordeal. Come, let's get you some food and a place to rest," Sarah said, her voice filled with compassion. Taken aback by the woman's kindness, Hector followed Sarah into the heart of the colony. As they passed small dwellings and communal facilities, Hector observed humans and aliens working side by side, mending equipment, preparing meals, and tending to the young and infirm. This place was an impossible oasis of cooperation in the midst of a fractured, war-torn galaxy. Sarah led Hector to a small tent and gestured for her to sit on a woven mat. "Wait here. I'll fetch some rations and supplies," she said, laying a gentle hand on Hector's shoulder. "You're safe now." The crossroads as Hector sat alone in the tent, a shadow fell across the flap. James Carter ducked inside, regarding her intently. He spoke in a low, urgent tone. "I know who you are, Hector of the Carrion. I never forget a face, especially one I once held in my sights." Hector tensed, reaching for a weapon that wasn't there. Carter held up a hand. "Peace. I mean you no harm, but we need to talk. The future of this colony, and the entire resistance, hangs in the balance." He crouched down to eye level, his gaze boring into hers. "I saw the hesitation in you then, just as I see the conflict in you now. You're not their mindless killing machine. There's a shred of humanity in you fighting to break free. It's time to choose, Hector. Will you complete your mission and snuff out the brightest hope this sector has seen in decades, or will you take a stand and help us defend what we've built here?" Hector stared back at him, her palms sweating. In Carter's eyes, she saw her own crossroads, the promise of a different path, a higher purpose. The seconds ticked by, each one an eternity. She knew her next words would shape not only her fate, but the destiny of billions. "I was sent to kill you," Hector said, her voice barely above a whisper. "But I can't do it. This place, these people, it's more than I ever imagined." Carter's expression remained neutral, but his eyes narrowed slightly. "Why should I believe you?" Hector reached into her pocket and retrieved a small data chip. "This contains classified Carrion intelligence, attack plans, troop movements, everything. It's yours now." Carter took the chip, studying it carefully before pocketing it. "It's a start, but trust is earned, not given." "I understand." Hector nodded. "Let me prove myself. I can help fortify your defenses, train your people. The Carrions will come for me, for all of us, when they realize I've turned." Carter considered this for a long moment, then extended his hand. "Welcome to the Resistance. Preparing for the onslaught." Over the next few weeks, Hector threw herself into preparing the colony for the inevitable Carrion assault. She worked tirelessly alongside the humans, showing them how to reinforce structures against Carrion weaponry and setting up early warning systems. In the makeshift training grounds, she drilled a core group of fighters in advanced combat techniques. One recruit, Michael Silva, stood out, a young soldier with quick reflexes and a sharp mind. During a particularly intense sparring session, Silva managed to slip past Hector's guard, landing a solid hit. "Good," Hector grunted, a hint of approval in her voice. "But your left side is still open, again." As they trained, Hector couldn't help but notice the wary glances and hushed whispers from other colonists. She overheard snippets of conversation. "Can we really trust the alien? What if it's all a trick?" Hector pushed the doubts aside, focusing on the task at hand. She knew actions would speak louder than words. One evening, as Hector was recalibrating the perimeter sensors, her communicator crackled to life. A familiar voice cut through the static. "Operative Hector, report status immediately. Failure to respond will be considered treason." Hector's blood ran cold. She rushed to find Carter, bursting into the command center. "They're coming," she said, breathless. "A Carrion strike team. We don't have much time." Carter's face hardened. "How long?" "Hours at most. We need to—" An explosion rocked the colony, cutting her off mid-sentence. Alarms blared as panicked shouts filled the air. "They're already here," Hector realized with dawning horror. Carter grabbed his rifle, barking orders into his comm unit. "All units, battle stations. This is not a drill." Hector sprinted towards the sound of weapons fire, Silva falling in beside her. They rounded a corner to find a group of Carrion soldiers advancing on the colony's main gate. "Remember your training," Hector said, drawing her own weapon. "Stay low, use cover, and watch each other's backs." The battle was fierce and chaotic. Hector moved with fluid grace, her assassin's training allowing her to anticipate the Carrion's every move. She called out enemy positions, guiding the human defenders to outmaneuver their attackers. In the heat of the fight, Hector saw a Carrion sniper taking aim at her exposed position. Before she could react, Silva tackled her to the ground, the shot meant for her head grazing his shoulder instead. "Silva!" Hector cried out, dragging him behind cover. "Why did you do that?" Through gritted teeth, Silva managed a pained smile. "That's what teammates do." As the last Carrion fell, an eerie silence settled over the battlefield. Hector helped Silva to the infirmary, her heart pounding from the intensity of the fight and the unexpected sacrifice of her human ally. Later, as the colony tended to its wounded and repaired the damage, Hector interrogated the captured Carrion squad leader. What she learned chilled her to the bone. This was just the beginning, she told Carter, her voice grim. The Carrions plan to conquer this entire sector. Your colony is a key strategic target. Carter's face was etched with concern. Then we need to strike back, hit them before they can mount a full-scale invasion. Hector nodded, a plan already forming in her mind. I know their weaknesses, their command structure. If we can disrupt their war machine at its source. She trailed off, realizing the enormity of what she was proposing. It would mean cutting ties with her people completely, becoming a true traitor to her kind. Captured and resolved, Hector's world narrowed to a single point of searing agony as the neural probe burrowed deeper into her skull. She bit back a scream, tasting blood where her teeth had cut into her cheek. Impressive! Vasra's cold voice cut through the haze of pain. But futile. Tell us what we want to know, and this can end. Hector's eyes fluttered open, meeting her former mentor's gaze. I've told you everything, she gasped. Vasra's lips curled into a sneer. We both know that's a lie. The probe pulsed again, sending white-hot tendrils of electricity through Hector's nervous system. Her body convulsed against the restraints, muscles spasming uncontrollably. Hours blurred into days as the interrogation continued. Hector retreated into her mind, building mental fortresses around the information that could endanger the human colony. She clung to memories of Carter's determined face, of Silva's unwavering loyalty, using them as anchors against the tide of agony threatening to sweep her away. During a brief respite between sessions, Hector overheard two guards discussing troop movements. Her keen mind, honed by centuries of training, a commotion in the corridor snapped Hector back to full alertness. The sounds of a scuffle, then silence. The cell door slid open, revealing a sight she'd scarcely dared hope for. James Carter. Hector blinked, hardly believing her eyes. The human resistance leader moved swiftly to her side, his face a mask of controlled fury as he took in her condition. We're getting you out of here, he said, his voice firm. Behind him, Silva appeared, looking pale but determined. Can you stand? He asked. Hector gritted her teeth as they helped her to her feet, her body screaming in protest. I'll manage, she said, forcing strength into her voice. They made their way through the labyrinthine corridors of the Carrion warship, Hector providing whispered directions despite her weakened state. After a tense firefight near the hangar bay, they ducked into a side passage. We can't leave yet, Carter said, his voice low and urgent. There's a data vault 2 levels down. If we can access it, we might find information crucial to stopping the Carrions. Hector nodded, understanding the risk and necessity of such a move. They proceeded cautiously, using Hector's knowledge of Carrion ship design to avoid patrols. The data vault itself was a cavernous room filled with glowing terminals. Carter's fingers flew over the alien interface, guided by Hector's instructions. His face grew grim as he absorbed the information scrolling across the screen. By the stars, he breathed. They're planning to hit the Resistance's central command, a heavily fortified jungle planet. Hector felt a wave of dizziness wash over her, whether from her injuries or the gravity of the situation she couldn't tell. How? She asked. A bioweapon, Carter replied, his voice tight with anger. Designed to target non-Carrion life forms. They'll wipe out the entire Resistance leadership in one strike. A familiar name on the screen caught Hector's attention. Vasra, she said, a complex mix of emotions coloring her voice. She's leading the strike force. In that moment, Hector knew what she had to do. The path ahead was clear, though it would likely lead to her death. She turned to Carter, her eyes burning with dedication. I need to go with them, she said. To warn the Resistance? Carter's brow furrowed. Hector, you're in no condition, she cut him off. I'm the only one who can get close enough to stop Vasra. This is my chance to make things right. For a long moment, Carter held her gaze. Then slowly he nodded. We'll get you there. As they made their final preparations, Hector felt a bittersweet ache in her chest. She looked at Carter and Silva. These humans who had shown her a different way of life, a purpose beyond mindless obedience. Thank you, she said softly. For everything. Silva clasped her arm, his eyes shining with emotion. Come back to us, he said. We've got a colony to rebuild. Hector managed a small smile. I will, she promised. With a final nod to Carter, she turned and strode towards the waiting shuttle. Her body still ached from the torture, but her mind was clear. She had a mission to complete, a debt to repay. As the shuttle's engines hummed to life, Hector allowed herself one last glance at the humans who had become her unlikely allies. Then she faced forward, steeling herself for the challenges ahead. The jungle planet awaited, and with it, a reckoning long overdue. The final showdown. The jungle planet loomed before Hector as her shuttle emerged from hyperspace. Verdant canopies stretched as far as the eye could see, concealing the resistance base somewhere in their depths. She guided the craft into a low approach, skimming just above the treetops. Hector's body still ached from her ordeal, but her mind was razor-sharp. She located a small clearing and set the shuttle down with practiced precision. As the engines powered down, she took a deep breath, centering herself. The humid air hit her like a wall as she stepped out, her senses heightened by the adrenaline coursing through her veins. Hector moved silently through the undergrowth, her assassin's training allowing her to slip past motion sensors and hidden cameras. She paused at the edge of a small ravine, spotting a camouflaged entrance nestled in the rock face. A figure emerged from the shadows, a female Zeon, her scaled skin shimmering in dappled sunlight. The guard's reptilian eyes narrowed as she leveled a pulse rifle at Hector. Halt! The Zeon hissed. Identify yourself. Hector raised her hands slowly. My name is Hector. I've defected from the Carrion Empire. I have urgent information for your leadership. The guard's grip on her weapon tightened. Why should I believe you? Because if you don't, everyone in this base will die, Hector replied, her voice steady. The Carrions are coming with a bioweapon that will annihilate all non-Carrion life forms. Something in Hector's tone gave the Zeon pause. After a tense moment, she lowered her rifle slightly. I'm Hera. Follow me, but make any sudden moves and I'll vaporize you where you stand. Hera led Hector through winding tunnels into the heart of the base. They emerged into a bustling command center, where a tall, avian-like being stood examining holographic displays. Commander Tok, Hera announced. This Carrion claims to have defected. She says there's an imminent threat. Tok's sharp gaze locked onto Hector. Explain yourself quickly. Hector wasted no time. She outlined the Carrion's bioweapon plot, providing specific details on troop movements and attack vectors. Tok's expression grew increasingly grim as she spoke. If this is true, he began, but a proximity alarm cut him off. One of the technicians called out, Sir, multiple ships dropping out of hyperspace. Tok's eyes widened. He turned to his staff, barking orders. Sound the evacuation alarm! All personnel to battle stations. But as Hector looked around at the battered but unbroken human colony, at Silva recovering in the infirmary, at the children peeking out from makeshift shelters, at Carter's determined expression, she knew there was no going back. This place, these people, had awakened something in her she thought long dead, a sense of purpose, of belonging, of hope. Whatever came next, whatever sacrifices lay ahead, Hector knew one thing with certainty. She would fight to protect this fragile spark of humanity against the encroaching darkness. The plan, in Motion Hector's plan, was daring, bordering on suicidal, but it was their best shot at survival. While the colony defenders engaged the Carrion fighters, Hector would lead a small team to infiltrate the enemy flagship and disable its main weapons array from within. The goal was simple: cripple the Carrion forces long enough to give the colony a fighting chance. As the plan came together, Hector couldn't help but notice the tension among the colonists. They had placed their trust in her, a former enemy, and now she was asking them to follow her into the heart of danger. Doubts gnawed at her, but she pushed them aside, focusing on the mission ahead. The day of the assault arrived quickly. The colony was a hive of activity, with soldiers preparing for the coming battle. Hector briefed her team one last time, going over the details of the plan. Stick to the plan and we'll make it out alive, she said, her voice steady. This is our best chance to turn the tide. Among the assembled fighters was Michael Silva, his shoulder bandaged, but his eyes burning with determination. "Silva," Hector said, surprised. "You should be in the infirmary." He met her gaze steadily. "With all due respect, ma'am, I'm not sitting this one out." A ghost of a smile tugged at Hector's lips. "Then let's make it count." Their stealth shuttle slipped past the chaotic dogfight that raged above the planet, latching onto the massive carrion vessel's hull with a bone-jarring impact. Hector led the way, her intimate knowledge of carrion ship design guiding them through maintenance shafts and rarely used corridors. They encountered sporadic resistance, dispatching carrion security teams with ruthless efficiency. Hector moved like a force of nature, her body a lethal instrument honed by centuries of training. Silva kept pace, his raw talent complementing her refined skill. At last, they reached the engineering deck. Hector's fingers danced across the control panel, initiating the shutdown sequence for the ship's primary weapon systems. A satisfied smile crossed her face as warning klaxons began to blare. "We did it," Silva breathed, relief evident in his voice. The triumph was short-lived. A chilling voice cut through the air, speaking in the harsh consonants of the carrion tongue. "Well done, little traitor. I trained you well." Hector spun around, her blood running cold. There, flanked by a squad of elite carrion assassins, stood Vasra, her former mentor and the deadliest killer in the Empire. "Vasra," Hector whispered, instinctively shifting into a combat stance. The carrion's lips curled into a cruel smile. "Did you think we wouldn't notice your defection? That we would let such treachery go unpunished?" Without warning, Vasra lunged forward. Hector barely managed to deflect the blow, the force of it sending her staggering backward. The two assassins clashed in a blur of motion, each anticipating the other's moves with uncanny precision. Silva and the other humans engaged the rest of the carrion squad, the confined space erupting into chaos. Hector fought with everything she had, drawing on skills she'd hoped never to use again. For a moment it seemed she might prevail. Then came the sickening sound of a blade finding flesh. Hector turned to see Silva crumple to the ground, a carrion energy dagger protruding from his side. She moved to help him, but Vasra's iron grip closed around her throat. "Enough games," Vasra hissed. "Surrender now and I'll let your human pet live. Refuse and he dies screaming." Hector's mind raced, searching desperately for a way out. But as she met Silva's pain-filled gaze, she knew there was only one choice. "I surrender," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Vasra's satisfied chuckle sent chills down Hector's spine as carrion restraints closed around her wrists. Hector caught a glimpse of James Carter on a nearby view screen. Their eyes met for a brief moment, and in that instant, a silent understanding passed between them. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. Outside, carrion ships descended through the atmosphere. Canisters rained down on the jungle, releasing a sickly green mist. Where it touched, plants withered and died within seconds. Hector and Hera raced to the perimeter defenses. Carrion dropships were landing, disgorging waves of assault troops. Hera coordinated the outer guards while Hector moved to plug gaps in the line. The sound of pulse fire filled the air as carrion and resistance forces clashed. Hector ducked under a swipe from a carrion blade, countering with a devastating series of strikes that left her opponent crumpled on the ground. A pained cry drew her attention. Commander Tok stumbled back, clutching a smoking wound in his side. Hector rushed to his aid, dragging him behind cover. "The base is compromised," Tok gasped. You have the most combat experience here. Take command. Save as many as you can." Hector nodded grimly, her mind already formulating a plan. She keyed into the base's comm system. "All remaining fighters fall back to evacuation point Beta. Hera, Z, meet me at the hangar." 3 minutes later, Hector stood before a small group of resistance members. Hera was there, along with a male Zean whose cybernetic implants marked him as Z. "We're going to hit them where it hurts," Hector said. "Board Vasra's flagship and disable the bioweapon systems." Z's electronic eyes whirred as he processed the information. "I can interface with their computers, shut down the deployment mechanism." Hector nodded. "Good. Let's move." They fought their way to a resistance gunship, blasting off amid a hail of carrion fire. Hector piloted with precision, weaving through the chaotic space battle raging above the planet. With a bone-jarring impact, they latched onto the hull of Vazra's massive flagship. Hector led the way, her familiarity with Carrion ship design guiding them through access tunnels and maintenance shafts. They encountered sporadic resistance, dispatching Carrion security teams with ruthless efficiency. At last, they reached the bioweapon control center. Hector's blood ran cold as she saw a familiar figure standing before the main console. Vazra turned, a cruel smile twisting her features. "I knew you would come, little traitor." Hector's muscles tensed, ready for action. "It ends here, Vazra." Without warning, the two assassins exploded into motion. They clashed in a deadly dance, each anticipating the other's moves with terrifying accuracy. Blows were exchanged at lightning speed, neither able to gain a decisive advantage. As they fought, Z worked frantically at a nearby terminal, his cybernetic implants interfacing directly with the Carrion systems. Hera provided covering fire, holding off Carrion reinforcements trying to breach the chamber. Hector felt her strength beginning to fade, the toll of her recent ordeals catching up with her. Vazra pressed her advantage, landing a vicious strike that sent Hector reeling. "You've grown weak," Vazra sneered. "Sentiment has made you soft." Hector's eyes narrowed. In that moment, she realized the truth. Her experiences with the humans hadn't weakened her. They had given her something to fight for beyond mere survival. With renewed focus, Hector launched,